Okay, this video is going to discuss how the wrapper classes work in case it's not clear to some of you. And so we're going to take a look at this is what we did in the other classes as well, is we went over this example. So now you have an example that you can look at when you need to deal with wrapper classes. This shows exactly how it can be used. And so the first thing I need you to do is notice that we have the decimal format in here as well, and this you can disregard unless you used it in your assignment. So disregard the decimal format. I'm just dealing with the wrapper class. So what I need you to do is I need you to notice the declarations right here, and I need you to draw memory locations for each of these variables. And so go ahead and pause the video, and on your notes somewhere put these 5 memory locations. Okay, mine are set and it's sloppy. Sorry, it's hard to write with this thing, but you'll notice we have up here, this is N-O-L, so num of lawns string. This is num of lawns, I guess I should say, num of lawns. And then down here we've got pay per lawn string and pay per lawn, and then total pay. Now we've got to have the string. Now this is recommended that you use when you have num of lawns, you usually think of a number, and if you're going to use it for something unusual like as a string, then you should change the name of that variable to say string on it. And so that's how I've done it, and that's what I would suggest you do. The num of lawns is normal. It's an int, so you don't have to write int at the end because that's normal to be an int. So notice you've got num of lawns as a string and as an int. You have pay per lawn as a string and as a double. And so the reason you need the string versions is to accept the input of the user when we're using dialog boxes, because a J option pane show input dialog box returns a string. That you have to memorize that. You have to know that an input dialog returns a string. That is not optional. You've got to know that. And so it's got to be stored in a string. You can't store it in an int or a double. It won't work. And so the next thing we look at is we have the input dialog line, which is right here. You should be able to use this. And so what's happening when the user, let's say they type 7, when they type 7, what's happening is when they click on OK and it goes to store that 7 in num of lawns string, it stores it as a string because of what we just said. So put quotes around it. So it indicates it's a 7. That's a string, not a regular number 7. The next thing is the pay per lawn string accepts the input for the pay per lawn, and that does the same thing here. So if somebody, let's say, makes let's say $10, let's say $10.50, it's going to store it as a string, not as a double. Now here's the critical thing to understand. The purpose, the reason why we have to convert these strings to ints and doubles is because to multiply this 7 times this 10.50, it would be the same as multiplying J times Q. Alright? You can't get anything. J, that's a string. Those are strings. The J is a letter. That's a string. And J times Q gives you nothing. It doesn't work. In the same way, the 7 is acting like a letter, and the 10.50 is acting like a letter. So it cannot be multiplied, added, subtracted, divided, or anything. All right, then we go into the important thing of where we're now converting. So now we're going to take our int variable right here, num of lawns, and we're going to store the conversion. And so what happens is you have the integer class, integer.parseInt, and in here it's going to the method parse int is going to use the value of num of lon string. Well, what is num of lon string? It is 7 with quotation marks. So here's what happens. It takes 7 with quotation marks and it puts it into another situation. Let's pause this for a second. Okay, what I just created was a great drawing here of a juice machine, a juicer. And so what happens is if you take the juicer and you put carrots into it, so let's say you put a carrot into it, then what's going to happen is what comes out is juice. So it's different than what it is when it goes in. And that's what you're going to do with the parse int method. Our parse int method is like a function or like a juicer. So you're going to put the 7 as a string into the parse int method right here. And the parse int method is going to do whatever it does. We don't know. It's going to do whatever it does, and it's going to convert it to a 7, and 7 will spit out. This 7 will be a normal 7, an int that you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide with. And so what it does then, it gets converted, and then it says it is assigned to num of lons. And so now in num of lons, it's a regular 7. It's an int. Now the paper long goes through the same things. It uses the parse double method instead. So this could be the parse double, and so you're going to take the 1050 right here as a string. You're going to put it into the parse double method, and it's going to spit out a double or a decimal from there, and it's going to store it in paper lon. So down here we'll have 10.5 with no quotation marks. Now what this does, it'll store it as a 10.5. It won't store the 0 at the end. Alright, so now you've got the int and the double versions, and now up here these will now be useless. They've served their purpose. They got the string values, and now they've been converted, so we no longer need them. And so we go on, and this is something you need to write on your notes. A good practice is to store calculations in a variable instead of storing them in a print statement or a message statement. So notice here that we are calling the variable total pay instead of putting num of lons times paper lon in here. Alright, do that over here and assign that calculation to a variable, and then call the variable in your print statement or your message statement, or even could be another calculation. And so this takes num of lons, which is an int, and paper lon, which is a double, and multiplies them together, and it gets 70. It looks like 73.5. I hope that's right. And then so total pay, of course, is a double, and so when it calls total pay, it'll say 73.5 right here. So it'll say you earned 73.5 for mowing lawns. Now, if you learn how to use this decimal format class, it's awesome because it will take that 73.5 and convert it to a $, 73.50, and that's cool. So anyway, so that'd be something to learn. It's on here. You can look at it later and use it later. Alright, so that's it. Use this to help make adjustments to last night's homework. See if this will do anything for you. And then, oh shoot, this isn't it. There's one more thing I gotta do. Oh shoot, I just lost something. I gotta get that coming up. Okay, this will be just a quick demonstration of the other way to do what we just did. So what we did just earlier, you notice the name of it said, what did it say? It said wrapper demo fewer, it said more variables. So that method I just showed more variables, but it was a little bit easier to understand, I think, to use. But this one is using fewer variables and fewer lines of code. And so this, you may prefer this, and so you are welcome to do this method. And so I just want to point out a couple things and we'll be done. So notice here we are not doing 5 variables. We are only doing 3. We're doing the ints and the doubles. No string things in order to take the J option pane input dialog box returns. Alright, so just 3. No string variables are necessary in this case. And so then you'll notice here we're going to get input from the user. Oh no, what's going to happen? Because we're going to get an input and it's going to be a string. Well, that's true, but watch this. We're going to do that integer class right here and surround it with parentheses, surround the J option pane input thing with parentheses. So in here, so we're going to do the innermost parentheses first, which is going to be the asking for input. So it asks for input, enter the number of lawns mowed. What it's going to do, the user is going to type 7, let's say. But of course, it'll be a string. After they click on OK, as a string, that 7 will be floating here in Never Never Land. Okay, but what's going to happen is the integer class is going to use the parse int method to convert that 7 to a 7. So all that happens before it gets assigned. All this on the right happens first, and then all the input first, and then the conversion to an int, and then that 7 as an int is stored in num of lawns, which is why we don't need num of lawns string, because it's an int now. And so the same thing happens with paper lawn. The double, the person enters it in as a string, and then the 10.50 goes through the parse double method, and then which changes it to 10.50 or 10.5 in this case, with no quotation marks, and then it gets assigned to paper lawn, which is a double. So everything else is the same. This does not need 2 more lines of code like we had from the last time, and it's eliminating 2 variables up here. So again, use this page and this video to help make corrections editing to last night's assignment. Thanks.